Welcome to Project Oasis. Project Oasis is all about creating emotional safety to help teachers to empower their students to effectively address the climate crisis as well as the other significant challenges in their lives and enhance learning. My name is David Hill. I'm an outdoor ed teacher at John Abbott College, and together with Jessica Burpee, a geography teacher here at the college, we developed Project Oasis. Project Oasis was designed to help students to face the existential threat of global warming. Our belief, which is consistent with what we found in our research, is that if students experience emotional safety and feel like they can be their most authentic selves, then they'll be better able to excel academically and courageously apply their knowledge and skills to address the climate crisis. We'd like to share some of what we've found to be most constructive in facilitating emotional safety. And as Project Oasis is a living, collaborative project, we invite you to share your best strategies with us, either directly or by joining our discussion group on Facebook. I'll share these links and platforms at the end of the video. Why is emotional safety important? Droughts, erratic weather, flooding, fires, biodiversity loss, ocean acidification, infestations, food scarcity, poverty, human displacement. These are just some of the issues worsened by greenhouse gas emissions and global warming. And they're placing an enormous burden on the health of our planet and the psyches of our young people whose futures will be most impacted by these events. The urgency to find solutions to the climate disruption is compounded by this fact. It also requires that we nurture the best, most creative, effective, and sustainable characteristics of society to address it. This is where we began our journey, by looking at how emotional safety can enable students to become powerful agents of positive change. After speaking with hundreds of students and conducting a voluntary student survey, we found that the greatest challenge that most of them encountered in being empowered to take action was fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being made fun of, fear of failure, fear of being marginalized, shamed, or humiliated. Being an advocate for the planet requires that we take bold and courageous positions that are sometimes at odds with the status quo. It requires that we express our thoughts, share our ideas, and engage in meaningful dialogue. Rational fear can help protect us from real threats to our health and safety, but irrational fears can paralyze us and prevent us from taking positive actions. Our premise is that if students feel emotionally safe, less afraid, and free to be their most authentic selves in schools, they'll have more free attention to be inspired and able to successfully address challenges, excel academically, and effect positive change. For the next little bit, we'll focus on how emotional safety affects our ability to respond appropriately to challenges, how it affects our health and wellness, and how it can be enhanced. While there'll be little mention of our ultimate goal, which is to address the climate crisis, we'll demonstrate that with each step, the creation of emotional safety contributes to liberating our students from the burdens and restraints that impede their abilities to effectively confront all challenges, including that of global warming. In our research, we found that 52%, or 155 of the 298 students that we surveyed, indicated that they were uncomfortable expressing themselves in class. 85% of those, or 132 of them, said it was because of fear of ridicule, fear of being judged, fear of appearing stupid, anxiety, or self-consciousness. What if you could transform your school into an oasis, a place where those students felt free to let their voices be heard? This is the key to effecting meaningful change. We know that change is needed. We may even know what that change looks like, but so many of us are afraid to courageously move towards it. So how can we help our students to overcome those obstacles? Our research, our combined teaching history of over 40 years, and specifically our shared experience of teaching a course on environmental activism, have given us some pretty clear indications of what we can do to provide our students with the tools to effectively address the climate crisis, enhance learning, build community, and face the greatest challenges in their lives. Through creating emotional safety and in turn providing a rich environment that nurtures critical thinking and courageous academic inquiry, we can improve academic success and empower students. While 47% of our respondents indicated that they'd felt unsafe in school, many also felt similarly at home and elsewhere in their daily lives. In our survey, we saw a wide range of issues that were facing our students: anxiety, depression, panic attacks, suicide attempts, substance abuse, physical and sexual abuse. 74% of the students surveyed said that they suffered from anxiety. 54% suffered from depression. 44% said they engaged in some form of self-harm, and 7% indicated that they had experienced sexual abuse in school. It's pretty clear. Our students are dealing with some very serious issues. At the same time, they're balancing the demands of work, family life, community, and academics. And some of those settings are making things worse. So where in their lives can they get a break from these stresses? The answer to these questions varies from person to person, and for some, there may be no relief at all. But what if there was one place which was designed to ensure that everyone felt emotionally safe, where a culture of kindness and gratitude were central to everything that happened there, a place where dignity and self-worth were sacred, a place where people felt unconditionally loved, valued, and cared for, without fear of ridicule, reproach, or humiliation, a place where they could be their most authentic selves in every moment. And what if that place was school? What would the world look like if we could ensure that school, the one experience that so many of us share, was designed to be a safe haven or oasis, where all students were encouraged to bravely take risks, an oasis where they learned to critically assess conflicts and problems with courage, kindness, and humility, an oasis where they were gently reminded of the gifts that they can be grateful for and the miracle of their existence, and finally, an oasis where their differences were embraced as opposed to tolerated. Every day, millions of Canadians send their kids to school, hoping that their heads and hearts will be nurtured and protected. Many will be, but some will come away feeling less than, because their integrity was compromised while they were there. Maybe you can relate to the millions of students who are suffering quietly because they were humiliated, bullied, or discriminated against, marginalized, or ridiculed by other students or teachers. According to Public Safety Canada, 47% of Canadian parents report having a child who is a victim of bullying. That's huge, and it's just one of the many forms of emotional trauma that so many of us have experienced in school. Some may suggest that these experiences foster resilience, and occasionally that may be true. However, it also results in trauma and long-lasting harms. While bullying and violence are obvious sources of harm to our students, there are many others that fly under the radar. To make this point, I often share a personal story that began in high school. Sitting in my science class, I introduced myself to my neighbor. He said to me, "Call me Pork, that's what my friends call me." Feeling uneasy with that, I pushed back a bit and asked what his real name was. He insisted that I call him by this really unflattering nickname. Fast forward 10 years to my first high school reunion. Someone had set up an online chat where people could reconnect and share their news. My science class neighbor took this opportunity to share how this nickname had been so hurtful to him and had caused him to become bulimic and suffer from anxiety and depression. I read his lengthy letter in sadness and surprise. I had asked him if I could call him by his original name, but he insisted that I use that nickname. It was sometime later that I realized that people will often sacrifice their own integrity if they believe it'll afford them social capital. Allowing ourselves to be demeaned by others, we may be trying to convey the message that we're cool or laid back. Our need for acceptance may replace our need to not compromise our integrity. Have you ever witnessed someone allowing others to treat them disrespectfully? What was the payoff for that sacrifice? This speaks to how powerful our need for belonging is, and how it can result in our making choices that are often in opposition to our values and ultimately damage our mental health. In the classroom, I often ask my students if they're being kind when they put down their classmates. Most invariably, they respond, "We're just joking or kidding around." The implication being that all parties are okay with it and it's consenting. But our survey found that 27% of our respondents felt unsafe at school because of a hurtful joke, and 16% because of ridicule. Even though there may be tacit consent, the harm may still be occurring. The other most common causes were bullying at 20%, humiliation 15%, and shaming also at 15%. So what effect do these experiences have on our young people and their emotional health and wellness? In the post-secondary context, when students enter college, are they still being adversely affected by them? And are students still experiencing these harms in college? The good news is that things seem to improve at the college level. Our research found that 15%, or 45 students, had felt unsafe at college. Of the 11 who had felt unsafe exclusively there, most expressed that these situations occurred less than once a month and resulted from interactions with other students. 18% pointed to their teachers as the reason they felt unsafe. These results are fairly consistent with what we found at all levels of schooling combined. 60% of students felt unsafe because of other students, and 50% indicated that they felt unsafe less than once a month. It's difficult to know the precise effect of feeling unsafe when it comes to frequency and intensity. We feel it's really important to constantly be attuned to the minority of students who are being severely and adversely affected by their experiences both within and outside of school. Some of the 47%, or 140 students who experienced feeling unsafe at school, may face unbearable burdens that influence their choices and lead to a cascade of events for themselves and others. Throughout history, we've seen how the suffering of an individual can negatively impact society as a whole. According to Statistics Canada, 1% of Canadians are victims of violent crime every year. The Mary Vincent Foundation has posted on their website that 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys report having been sexually abused before the age of 18. Both of these statistics have profound effects on individuals, families, and communities. We don't need to look very hard to see the lives of those that have been tragically lost. Devin Bracci-Selvi, Simone Dufour, Amanda Todd, Rehtaeh Parsons, Thomas Taifer. Theirs are just a few of the heartbreaking stories that have been exacerbated by unkind words and actions. Every year, nearly 4,000 Canadians take their own lives, and many manifest their pain in other ways. Substance abuse, anxiety, depression, self-harm, and panic attacks. Others lash out to express their pain. We've seen devastating examples of this. The Quebec City mosque shooting, pedestrians subdued by a tormented driver in Toronto, the Polytechnic massacre in Montreal. These types of tragic events are reflections of a culture that embraces isolation and disconnection between one another and the environment. So how can we make our schools less complicit? What choices might those individuals who chose to engage in such hurtful acts have made if they had felt that their school was an emotional oasis, where they were loved unconditionally and treated with kindness? We believe that SageApp offers a unique opportunity to explore how creating these conditions can positively affect our students. They can provide us with an understanding of how their lived experience throughout their schooling has shaped their concept of emotional safety and its effect on their health and wellness. Interestingly, although 15% of our students report feeling unsafe in college, more than half said they felt uncomfortable expressing themselves in class. Similarly, 50% of our respondents experienced mental health issues, and over 3/4 of them said that schooling did not improve their condition. Also, of the 129, or 44% of students who'd engaged in self-harm, over 3/4 of them said the same thing. For us, these realizations were the first inflection point, where the survey seemed to suggest an inconsistency. The students were telling us that they felt relatively safe in college, yet not safe enough to be able to speak freely or to see any improvement in their mental health issues. So we were compelled to ask how our students define emotional safety. Can we be experiencing emotional safety and at the same time feel too afraid to share our thoughts and feelings? Does it stand to reason that being in an emotionally safe learning environment would still not alleviate any of our mental health issues? Is it possible that our students have set the bar too low? Given the fact that they reported feeling unsafe more frequently in primary and secondary school, is it possible that some of them are desensitized to feeling emotionally unsafe?
If anything, we need to teach our kids that they should be safe, that anything but that is unacceptable. So if you're in an environment that you don't feel safe, or it's causing you anxiety, you're not supposed to be there. That shouldn't be that way. If they don't realize at a young enough age that isn't right, they tend to accept it, and that hurts them as a person, right? Because you're accepting something you shouldn't have to accept.
Interestingly, when we asked how many students had felt unsafe in school, we received a 47% affirmative response rate. But when we asked who made students feel unsafe, it increased to 60%. This suggests that when given a more detailed question about emotional safety, students reconsider their answers. It's fairly simple to illustrate how common practices that perpetuate emotional harm are normalized. Allow me to share another story. As a phys ed teacher, I see the primary purpose of others in my profession to instill in students a love of physical activity and movement. If we're successful in that goal, I think we can say we've done our jobs. Every semester, I ask my students if they've ever taken a phys ed class where captains were chosen to make teams. Before I finish this story, I want to say that I don't blame teachers for doing this. I just want to point out that we have many opportunities to courageously look at our pedagogy and andragogy. Often, we gravitate towards what's familiar, even when it doesn't necessarily make sense. Okay, back to my story. So now we have two team captains. Typically, one of two things happens. Either they will choose the students that are the most valued as athletes, or they'll choose the ones that are the most popular. Either way, in the end, teachers have spent 5 or more minutes of valuable activity time making at least one student feel like they're either the least valued player there, or the least popular, or both. It's hard to imagine that this student, who may go through this experience many times throughout their schooling, will be excited to participate in lifelong physical activity and sports. I tell this story to illustrate that until we breach issues like this, they often continue unnoticed and unquestioned. They're normalized and accepted as reasonable ways of doing things. It's our hypothesis that students and staff members alike are spending a significant amount of the time they spend in school feeling unable to be their most authentic selves and unable to alleviate the causes and/or symptoms of their mental health issues. Jiddu Krishnamurti, an Indian philosopher, inspired the idea that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, and our students are manifesting that reality. They're showing us every day that we need to do better in taking care of one another and the planet to heal our profoundly sick society. Mental health issues are increasing, and we're more medicated than we've ever been, and we often feel disempowered to change our current situation. How many times have you sat in a classroom or a meeting and felt moved to share a thought, observation, or insight, only to decide not to? Although 52% of our students said that they felt uncomfortable expressing themselves in class, my years of experience teaching leads me to believe that that number may be considerably higher. Some years ago, I asked 40 of my students to anonymously write down the reasons why they chose not to ask questions in class, if applicable. Here's the results. 67% were afraid of asking a dumb question and being negatively judged. 5% felt self-conscious. 5% were shy. 5% experienced anxiety. 8% said good questions didn't come to them when they were in class. And 10% said they had no interest. If we can extrapolate for the 15% or 45 students who felt unsafe at college, This suggests that while we have some work to do to lessen the trauma that some of our students are experiencing in our schools, at the SAGEP or college level, our greatest challenge is to create environments that allow our students to heal, to thrive and overcome the issues that impede their ability to express themselves and be their most genuine selves. So how do we do that? Jessica and I have been exploring strategies that all teachers can use in their classrooms to enhance emotional safety and create richer, more meaningful learning environments. We invite you now on a journey of empowerment to make each of our realities and those of our students a kinder, fuller, and more sustainable one. We've adopted the 4 pillars of courage, kindness, gratitude, and critical thinking to achieve that goal. Through nurturing a culture that reflects these values, students will be better able to be their most genuine selves. We believe that being authentic and using these 4 pillars as decision-making filters, students will enhance their ability to address the most challenging issues of our time, particularly the climate crisis. It was important to us that our approach be practical and easy to implement by all teachers without them having to significantly change the content of their courses. Here I'll share the 5 main strategies that we found were most effective in creating emotionally safe learning environments and empowering students. Each of these can be easily integrated into any teacher's class or subject. We believe it's extremely important to introduce emotional safety into our classes in a coordinated and coherent way. Setting the bar for our expectations requires that we share our thoughts and feelings about the reasons and benefits for creating safe spaces for students. I like to start my semester by sharing my mission statement for emotional safety. This sets the bar for my courses and establishes expectations. I call my statement the PEACE statement. It's an acronym for Physical Educators Affirming Compassionate Environments. It's designed to address the specific challenges that we encounter in physical education, as well as those shared by all classes. Here's what it looks like. I'll read a short excerpt that captures the spirit of it. It also means facilitating an emotionally safe environment where everyone experiences love, acceptance, kindness, care, and open-mindedness, where they're free from persecution, ridicule, discrimination, marginalization, humiliation, and bullying, and disparaging remarks, even in jest. We embrace difference. We support the inclusion of all students, regardless of ethnicity, ability, sex, age, nationality, socioeconomic situation, religion, skin color, body type, physical appearance, sexual orientation, beliefs, and gender affiliation. We assume the responsibility to nurture an environment of inclusion and model it for one another. The next tool is designed to create a culture of kindness. In our survey, 60% or 179 students said that they felt unsafe because of other students. By contrast, 24% or 72 of them attributed that experience to teachers. As teachers, we have the opportunity to address both by setting the tone in our classes. We can model kindness and provide our students with an example of what it looks like. We can also set expectations that guide interactions between our students. Interestingly, the situation that most often led to them feeling unsafe was a hurtful joke. 27% of our respondents pointed to that cause. So it's reasonable to think that when students are experiencing painful incidents in school, those that are inflicting this pain may think that they're just harmlessly joking around. This situation is often compounded by students' need for social acceptance. By laughing at hurtful jokes, they may believe that they're gaining social capital. In situations where someone's self-esteem is being compromised, it's important to avoid attacking those involved. Instead, we use a very simple and powerful tool that allows those involved to reflect on their words and actions without being shamed. We simply ask the question, in as neutral a way as possible, are you being kind? Whenever possible, please consider speaking one-on-one to the student rather than in front of the other class members. This can avoid potential embarrassment and ego-driven conflict. In addition to being a litmus test for healthy interactions, it's also the standard we choose to nurture in pursuit of creating a culture of kindness, where students are encouraged to look out for one another and share random acts of kindness. The third strategy involves critical thinking, a global approach that's instrumental in the creation of emotional safety. It's multifaceted and can be applied through several easy-to-use techniques that can facilitate clear and conflict-free communication. Using strategic questions, we can develop rich learning environments that embrace difference and inclusion simultaneously, exercising our cognitive ability to distinguish what is known and what we feel strongly about. We can avoid communication pitfalls that result from confirmation bias, especially bias that comes from our need for affiliation with others. I'll often ask my students, whose voice is being heard and why? Whose voice is absent and why? Who benefits from a given message with respect to money, power, social capital, and who is disadvantaged? It's also important to consider what unsubstantiated assumptions are being made and how they influence the answers to those questions. The answers can provide some insights into the relationships of power that exist in our society and in our classrooms. I also ask them to compare and contrast the information that they're being provided with their own lived experience. This can be an excellent springboard for group discussions if it's relevant to the course or time permitting. Let's look at an example of possible media bias through the lens of these strategic questions.
One of the first stories that Jane came up with was the revelation that most of the milk in the state of Florida and throughout much of the country was adulterated with the effects of bovine growth hormone.
With Monsanto, I didn't realize how effectively a corporation could work to get something on the marketplace. The levels of coordination they had to have. They had to get university professors into the fold. They had to get experts into the fold. They had to get reporters into the fold. They had to get the public into the fold. And of course the FDA, let's not leave them out. They had to get the federal regulators convinced that this was a fine and safe product to get it onto the marketplace. And they did that. They did that very, very well.
This example illustrates how media sources and others experience pressure to address a given issue in a biased way. It's not difficult to draw parallels between this and many of the divisive issues that we've faced over the last several years. The issues of climate change, human rights, abortion, free speech and censorship, gun laws, and the COVID response have all been catalysts in polarizing debates that have resulted in deep divisions between individuals, among families, and within communities. But is it the issues themselves that are divisive, or is it our response to them that separates us? Can we create spaces where we can have those difficult conversations without fear of being attacked or discounted? If we encourage students to use these strategic questions and question our teaching, we nurture their ability to respond appropriately to the demands of an ever-changing world. However, this may present us with some challenges. As students increasingly question what we teach them, they may be more hesitant to accept our words as truth without credible supporting evidence. They'll challenge us, sometimes to enhance understanding, or sometimes just because they can. Either way, we wind up with a more candid exchange of ideas, unfettered by the stigma of questioning authority. Students who are encouraged to question and engage in critical academic inquiry may challenge your authority and your information, but they will also be learning to create their own unique learning journey. If we can nurture a culture of respect and empathy, that journey will be rich and rewarding. We can also use critical thinking in communication. It entails relating to the person as opposed to their irrational patterns such as defensiveness, contempt, attacking, non-acknowledgement, or labeling the other. When we're communicating with others, we need to connect to the person as opposed to the pattern behaviors, insecurities, or emotions. It can be useful to visualize speaking to the inner child within that person. How would you speak to that child? Is it different from what you would say to the adult or adolescent that you see before you? Is it kinder, more compassionate, or empathetic? If the answer is yes, go with it. It's pretty challenging to feel emotionally safe in an environment where you feel like the majority of people there will attack you for your beliefs. Or worse, they may believe that people who share your views are in some way morally or intellectually deficient. How can we address issues that lead to division in a way that allows us to enhance dialogue, engage in healthy debate, and nurture collaboration? Let's begin with the assumption that we all have more in common than we do differences. Most people share the basic values of respect, compassion, equality, and freedom. Often we run into conflict because our chosen paths to achieving these goals diverge. Historically, we've seen that people fought over beliefs, values, and understandings related to health, science, religion, and socio-political issues. Having opposing views can lead to a healthy exchange of ideas, but the danger is sometimes people choose to pick a side and dig in, even when the evidence conflicts with their understanding of a given issue. There are many inherent problems with this approach, and it often leads to increasing conflict rather than resolution. Let's look at some of the issues. Firstly, many of us do not feel comfortable acknowledging that we often know far less than we know about a given subject. The next strategic question is a powerful tool that allows us to explore why we may feel so strongly about the statements that we make. Fran Peavy, the writer and social activist, came up with the next strategic question that can help us to clarify our position on a given subject. What do you know for sure, and what are you not certain about? If we stop and ask ourselves this question when we're triggered to oppose someone else's opinion, it can introduce some humility into our discussions. And acknowledging what we're certain of and what we're unsure of creates space for an exchange of ideas, philosophies, and concepts. Often to compensate for what we don't know, we defer to experts. This is a reasonable strategy. The problems arise when we have conflicting expert opinions. In these instances, the experts whose message most closely agrees with the agenda of the source will be more broadly circulated, creating the illusion of consensus among experts. Dissenting voices, meanwhile, may be suppressed, cancelled, or censored. To draw attention to this when breaching topics that are contentious with my students, I return to my strategic questions. Whose voice is being heard and why? Whose voice is absent and why? Who benefits with respect to money, power, and social capital? And who is disadvantaged? I then ask them to compare and contrast the information that they're being provided with their own lived experience. Sometimes, our affiliation with or acceptance from others is contingent upon our adopting their views. The need for acceptance and belonging is so strong, and it can cloud our own beliefs and integrity. Even for those who remain faithful to their individual ideals, once they align themselves with others on a given issue, they're often stereotyped or labeled inaccurately. Because many of those who share their position may hold other views that are in sharp contrast to theirs. It's so important to not stereotype others and to listen with humility. Failure to do so results in a culture where people are too afraid to share their thoughts or ideas. We don't live in a black and white world, and we need to learn to appreciate the nuance and complexities in so many of the difficult issues that we face. For example, educating people about the value of recycling is an important part of environmental sustainability. However, it can also be used as a distraction to avert our attention away from the fact that the overwhelming majority of greenhouse gas emissions are the result of the activities of a very small number of very rich corporations. Similarly, electric cars result in reducing the emissions from vehicles, but they also create pollution, and they can include child labor in their supply chains. By actively and openly listening and trying to better understand how those who hold opposing views are trying to fulfill our shared values, we can decrease the tension in a charged debate. To build a healthy dialogue, we can also follow the simple practice of asking 2 questions for every statement that we share. This allows us to focus on our learning as opposed to our ego-driven telling. Once we feel that we understand another person's perspective on an issue, and we still feel inclined to want to share our perspective, That's fine, as long as we can allow for a resolution of agreeing to disagree. The next strategy is expressing gratitude. There's a growing body of research that demonstrates that expressing gratitude is associated with both mental and physical benefits. Feeling grateful improves sleep, decreases depression and anxiety, and reduces risk of disease. Earlier this week, I was waiting in line to see a theater production. Some of the older patrons were grumbling about the fact that those with mobility issues, particularly those with canes and walkers, were being allowed to bypass the line so they could get seated sooner. An older gentleman in front of me seemed completely unbothered. With a peaceful smile on his face, he said, "I'm just thankful I don't need a cane or walker." For me personally at this moment, I'm grateful for the indigenous people who stewarded this land before colonization. I'm grateful for the habitats, the trees, plants, and animals that survived as a result of their intention and mindfulness that led to making sustainable decisions that would positively affect generations to come. And today, I'm thankful for the indigenous leaders who've embraced their traditional teachings that seek out peace, truth, environmental sustainability, and health. The last strategy in creating emotional safety is courage. It takes courage to be your most authentic self. Stepping outside your comfort zone allows you to challenge the views and actions that conflict with your values. And it allows you to be true to those beliefs and values that you hold most dear. To implement this practice, we need to be able to identify when it's appropriate to do so. Not everything that scares us needs to be challenged. Rational fears can prompt actions that can keep us safe, whereas irrational fears may prevent us from engaging in activities that can enhance our growth, health, and wellness. Most of the things that scare us are irrational and can't physically hurt us. These fears often prevent us from stepping outside our comfort zones and taking risks that will allow us to grow and learn. It's a great start to do something every day that scares you. How are our collective fears diminishing our potentials? I like to use the metaphor of expanding your living room. Our living rooms are where we feel comfortable, where we can kick our feet up and relax. Every time we push ourselves outside our comfort zone and take a risk, we expand the edges of our living room. As our living room expands, we increase our realm of possibility. We have more space to learn, to grow, and interact with the world. My challenge to every one of you is to see how much you can expand your living room. We all have gifts to share. Some of us are afraid to share those gifts, often because we don't feel confident, loved, cared for, accepted, or valued, and we fear rejection. What can we accomplish, and how much will we all grow and prosper if we can create emotionally safe and enriching learning environments where care and kindness are our foundation and everyone feels loved, cared for, validated, and accepted? Using a slightly contrived acronym, let's review the key strategies of Project Oasis. 1. Are we open to critical thinking? Students are asked to employ critical thinking skills in their assessment of information, to process messages through a lens of whose voice is being heard and why, whose voice is absent and why, who benefits from a given message with respect to money, power, and social capital, and who is disadvantaged. What assumptions are being made and why? What do you know for sure and what are you not certain about? To ensure that we're effectively listening to others, we can ask 2 questions for every statement that we share. We can agree to disagree, and we can speak to their inner child. 2. Are we being kind? How can we nurture a culture of kindness and caring? We can set the bar by creating a mission statement that details our expectations. We can ask students to use kindness as a litmus test to assess whether or not they're building each other up or breaking them down. Are you being kind? Kindness is the foundation for creating an emotionally safe oasis where every student feels valued, loved, and cared for. 3. Seek out opportunities to be courageous. Encourage students to develop resilience by stepping outside their comfort zones to both extend kindness and peacefully express dissenting views. Nurture a supportive environment where students are encouraged to take risks and do something every day that scares them. Expand their living rooms and be their most authentic selves. 4. Inspire gratitude. Take a deep breath. Focus on the present and your immediate surroundings. Seek out those elements in your current reality that you're grateful for. Teach students to develop the practice of finding things to be grateful for and sharing their gratitude with others. 5. Synthesize. Put it all together. Bring the 4 pillars together. Take another deep breath and visualize yourself fully embodying the qualities of critical thinking, courage, kindness, and gratitude. What does that look like? We hope that this presentation casts some light on some of the opportunities and possibilities that we have to transform our schools into places where everyone knows that everyone else has their backs, places where we can explore and challenge cultural dogmas and liberate ourselves from irrational social constructs and stereotypes. Through Project Oasis, we'll continue on this path towards kindness, courage, critical thinking, and gratitude. We invite you now to join us in doing some short exercises that can help us to implement the 4 pillars into our pedagogy and andragogy. Thanks for listening. These activities have been designed to help students to internalize the 4 pillars of kindness, critical thinking, courage, and gratitude. The first activity is called the embrace. Standing in a circle, holding hands, we all look around at everyone else and acknowledge and appreciate the others in the group. When I say start, each person connects with the first person that they make eye contact with to share 30 seconds or so of mutual appreciation. We have 3 options to do that. We can make eye contact, we can hold hands, or we can hug. We don't need to time it. Each person can take 5 slow, deep breaths, and when either of you feel ready, we can close our eyes longer than a blink or give a gentle squeeze to gracefully disengage. There's no hierarchy in those choices, and each provides a unique opportunity to connect with the other person. Holding our 2 fingers up indicates that we wish to make eye contact. Try to look into the soul of the other person. Try to see their truest essence, the joys and pains that have shaped their life's journey. Try to maintain a loving gaze that expresses that you are there for that person and that you hold them and their life experiences as sacred. Your sole purpose in that moment is to love and protect them. The second option is to hold hands. Holding our hands out in front of us with our palms up indicates that we wish to hold hands. While doing everything that I just described and making eye contact, we gently hold on to our partner's hands. Again, we're trying to communicate to them that we are there for them and that we see them, we care for them, and we are protecting them. Holding one hand in the shape of an O indicates that we wish to hug. Same intention, and we're mindful of our body language. The entire exercise is done without speaking. Some people may feel uncomfortable being close to others, and if people feel they need to express their feelings, such as through laughter or crying, that's fine. However, it's important to allow everyone to benefit fully from the activity without distractions, comments, or jokes. It's widely known that hugs can reduce the effects of stress, enhance health, and improve immunity. We also know how important it is for people to feel like they are seen and valued. In 2010, a comprehensive meta-analysis on social relationships and mortality risk showed us that the greatest indicator of health and longevity is the quality and depth of our relationships with others, not physical activity, stress management, or diet, as many had thought. So how can we use this exercise to deepen our connections to others? Let's begin with our intention. When we make eye contact or hold hands, we strive to do that in a way that conveys our intention to be there for the other person. Our expressions are kind and loving. Our hands are gentle and unambivalently platonic, there to share and receive kindness without any intentional movement. A hug can communicate many things. It can be an assertion of power, a romantic gesture, or a celebration. In the embrace, the hug has intention. It's a sincere expression of empathy, kindness, and caring. It's offered as a gesture to protect and provide safety and security. Here are some familiar hugs you may have experienced. The Hulk hug, used to assert dominance. The long-distance hug, to avoid intimacy. The creepy hug, usually an unwanted gesture. The celebratory hug, explosive and possibly frenetic. The bro hug, supportive but distant. In the embrace, the hug is consenting, mindful of equality, our hearts are touching, we're fully committed to being there for the other person, and we gracefully disengage with a gentle squeeze when we're finished. It is important to note that everyone can switch between their choices of either making eye contact, holding hands, or hugging at any point. Also, making eye contact trumps holding hands, and holding hands trumps hugging. In other words, whoever's chosen the method of connecting which is higher up on the list has priority. The next exercise is called the internalization exercise. In this exercise, we'll use lying as a tool to imagine our true potential to create emotional safety without the constraints of our current reality. Take 3 deep breaths, filling your tummy. Imagine each inhale drawing in peace and calm. With every exhale, feel yourself releasing all of the stress and tension in your body. Holding hands with a partner or two, take turns telling one another about the amazing, emotionally safe environment that you created with your students during your classes. Imagine what that looks like and spend 2 minutes describing it for each other. After everyone has shared, tell each other the one thing that you're willing to commit to doing with your classes to help create an emotionally safe learning environment. The last exercise is called the cinnamon roll. To prepare for this activity, choose a call and return song that has loving, kind, empowering, and collaborative words. Optionally, you can make up some simple movements that illustrate the themes of the song. Have everyone form a circle and take 3 deep breaths, filling their tummies. Imagine each inhale drawing in peace and calm. With every exhale, feel yourself releasing all of the stress and tension in your body. Ask everyone to hold hands and project a positive thought that you would like to travel through every person and around the circle, like an electrical impulse. You can decide if you want to invite people to share their positive thought afterwards. Sing your call and return song using the movements so that students can copy you. The song goes like this. So I'm going to do the first line, and then I'm going to ask you folks to read it back, to sing it back to me. So it goes, dear friends, let me tell you how I feel. Dear friends, let me tell you how I feel. You have given me such riches, I love you so. You have given me such riches, I love you so. Awesome. Moving their bodies in unfamiliar ways and letting their singing voices be heard is both scary and empowering. Stress that we're all here to provide encouragement and support to each other. After completing the song, have the students form a human cinnamon roll. Dear friends, let me tell you how I feel. You have told you how I feel. I have lived in such riches. I have you dear friends. Dear friends, how I feel. You have told you such riches. I have lived in such riches. I love you so. Dear friends, dear friends. Once they are all together, complete the exercise by having everyone share 3 tones, which allows them to experience a unique harmonic convergence. So now we're going to do our 3 tones. Ready? So this is the first tone. Ready? This concludes our video. Thank you for listening and watching. Join us on our discussion group on Facebook or email us.